10.
You got that right. I am Theo Caldwell. This is the Rolling Stones' Start Me Up. You remember years ago, Windows, Microsoft wanted this song, this Rolling Stones song, for their commercials for Windows. And because you press start to start Windows, right? Not anybody who still uses the thing, right? And the Rolling Stones, I remember them being interviewed, and they go, yeah, they asked us. I'm not going to do the accent. They asked us, and we were like, yeah, we want $1 million. And Bill Gates, who's got $1 million in like his spare tuxedo pants, went, yeah, okay, here's $1 million. And they, of course, the Rolling Stones were snickering. We got it for much less, I think, to open tonight's broadcast. And I'll tell you, you who are regular listeners know, first of all, this is the greatest hour in radio broadcast history, but you further know that we do a theme with the music. I'll tell you right off the top, tonight's theme is the Rolling Stones. We got a news hook. We'll get to it almost instantly. In fact, instantly. It's because the first day of this past week was Mick Jagger's birthday. I think he's Sir Mick Jagger. Happy birthday, Sir Mick Jagger. He was born in what, 19-something, 18, whatever. Old guy. 72 is what he turned, so whatever that is. You do the math. But also, we're doing the Rolling Stones as it's kind of like an encore to the last broadcast that we did, where I got so much blowback for suggesting, or even asking the question, is Led Zeppelin the greatest band in history? Now, it's funny. I say this to you folks all the time. I discuss serious issues with you, okay? Like the disputed region of Kashmir, or abortion, or whatever, right? But I say to you, is Led Zeppelin the greatest band in history? I hear about it all week. My God. And my mom was yelling at me, like everybody's upset. Now, some people are in favor of the view that Led Zeppelin's great. But here's the thing. Why Rolling Stones? Yeah, it's Mick Jagger's birthday, and there's one other news hook to why we chose the Rolling Stones. But also because in the debate, the maelstrom, if you will, that this broadcast generated last week, a number of people stuck up for the Rolling Stones and said they might be the best band in history. They're not derivative, according to some. And we had one caller named Randy, who I loved the Zen-like simplicity of his point of view. You can go back. It's on TheoCaldwell.com in the radio section. Listen to it. Listen to the whole broadcast. Memorize it. Transcribe it. And anyway, Randy called and he goes, Rolling Stones is the best. And I asked him why, and he goes, because I always liked the Rolling Stones. Isn't that really the size of it, right? When you get that good. But I always thought of the Rolling Stones as being just like 3 chords. Not even a red guitar, 3 chords and the truth. Just 3 chords and Sir Mick Jagger gesticulating. And even, just turned 72. That's the news hook. You know who else? You know who else I got the most blowback from about this? And I knew it would happen. I knew I'd get a lot. But a tremendous amount was Kathy Shadle. Now, I mentioned Kathy Shadle an awful lot on this broadcast. But she's a columnist. She's a columnist and a bloggeress, as she calls herself, and an editor. She has the greatest named blog in the history of bloggington. It's called 5 Feet of Fury. I'm going to say it again, 5 Feet of Fury. Isn't that cool? I almost wish I were shorter so I could have that as my blog name. But anyway, Kathy Shadle. But when she's not blogging and commenting and columnizing and getting herself in trouble, she's always all about the music. So I knew she'd have a strong reaction. And actually, surprisingly, she said The Who. She said The Who is the greatest band ever. I don't know what she thinks about the Rolling Stones. But here's what she said. Kathy Shadle said about Led Zeppelin from last week's broadcast. She goes, have there ever been 3 more talented musicians who, when united, so underachieved, plagiarized, and wrote songs about elves? It's so cutting. It's so cutting. Yeah, as I say, I've talked also about people who go there. Like, I'm a right-of-center guy. I can be, bellicose, prickly, irksome. I can be that way, but I don't go there like some people do. Kathy Shadle goes there. She writes and says things that you might agree with, but not only do you not write or say them yourself, you don't even think them lest your HR department or a human rights commission come after you. Kathy Shadle is an amalgam of Ann Coulter, Ayn Rand, and the best parts of Harper Lee. All right, enough of that. One more thing before we get going with the other news stories of the week, besides the anniversary of the birth of the great Sir Mick Jagger. I got a question for you. And you can start texting me about it. It'll be the leitmotif through the broadcast. And those of you who know why I'm asking this question, just don't ruin it for the others. Okay? Don't tell, when I ask the question, you're going to know, if you know, you're going to know why I'm asking. Here's what I want you to text me. If you're listening live, if you're listening to the podcast, just enjoy and you're welcome. But if you're listening live, text me at 71010, or maybe call me if you want to at 416-872-1010 or star 8255 on your mobile cellular device. Here's the question. Who was the greatest wrestling villain of all time? Who was the greatest wrestling villain or heel of all time? Text me at 71010, and we'll get to the news hook for that. Okay, so Sunday of this past week, as we go through the news of the week, as we do in this broadcast, was the closing ceremonies of the PanAm Games here in Toronto. All right, a lot has been said about it. All kind of news outlets are asking, oh my God, I'm sorry. I got distracted. I'm watching Jason Kenney and John Tory dance at Carabana on the screen here. This could have been prevented. This is a problem. And one of them thought, oh my God, one of them thought this was a good idea. Can we get somebody down there to stop this? Is this live? That can't happen. You know, and I'm friends with both those guys, but a man has got to know his limitations. Okay, anyway, back to the news. Sunday, PanAm Games concluded. Canada won 217 medals, the most we ever won, all right? Second most in the whole thing after a certain country to our immediate south, doesn't matter. Kanye West, despite the protests, he performed at the closing ceremonies, okay? The microphone he was using died, he threw it in the air, which I guess is the opposite of dropping the mic. Great! And all that was covered, wasn't it? Wall to wall. You've heard that 1,000 times because you've been hearing about the PanAm Games for like 2 years, whatever. Now, I'm getting texts about the greatest wrestling villain. Texts at 71010. And Toronto 3896, you're absolutely right. Don't tell anybody if they haven't heard the news why I'm asking you who's the greatest wrestling villain of all time. Text me at 71010. Anyway, here's what you might not have heard because I had to look for it. In fact, I just came across it because it wasn't reported. Did you know that during the PanAm Games, half of Cuba's field hockey team defected? That's 8 guys. So they were in Canada for the games, Cuban field hockey team, and they defected. Now, this story, with all the stuff about HOV lanes that I've talked about, with the Kanye West, with oh, isn't this great, with John Tory walking around, whatever, nobody talked about the fact that 8 guys took the opportunity to defect from Cuba while they were in a free country, this one, Canada. Now, I said, a recent broadcast, can't remember if it was the last one, I said, look, Canadians have been woefully ignorant about Cuba for a very long time, and I don't want to belabor it again, but I've had this conversation with a lot of people who are otherwise good-natured, good-hearted people who don't realize what they're doing when they take vacations in Cuba. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Castro regime needed to find money fast because they had no way to support themselves. And so they reached out to every country except for basically the United States because they had the embargo. And they were a cheap place for people to take vacations. So here's the move. First of all, as I said, to take a vacation in what is someone else's prison, that is the Cuban people, that's sociopathic. You may not realize you're doing it, but it's bad news. And I don't care if they're a sponsor on this show, and I don't want them as a sponsor on this show, Cuban tourism. I don't want it. That's one. Now, two, and this is the other thing, the money that you spend in Cuba, it does not go to the people. It goes to the government, and the people are paid in pretty much worthless Cuban pesos. It is a horrible place. And you have seen in the news, it's been reported here all over the place, that Barack Obama, President of the United States, effectively lifted the embargo. He's opened an embassy in Havana, and he's been criticized for it, rightfully so, by Jeb Bush, by Marco Rubio, and basically by anybody who understands what Cuba is really all about. It is a communist dictatorship. As John F. Kennedy said, a communist is somebody who's read Marx and Engels. An anti-communist is someone who understands Marx and Engels. So while you find people in this country, horrible public figures like Liberal MP Carolyn Bennett, who'll tell you how wonderful the healthcare system and the education system is in communist Cuba. Let me tell you something. Every communist dictatorship has always had its apologists in the West. Lenin called them useful idiots, people who will take whatever statistic a communist dictatorship says and say how great the country is. So even though the great Barack Obama has, without concession, opened diplomatic relations with Cuba, even though he's pronounced everything is great, everything's Jake, 8 guys from the Cuban field hockey team defected to Canada. And where did you hear that? Did you know this? Did you hear this anyplace else besides this show? Because I don't think you did. Because on all the fireworks and what's Kanye doing and who's he wearing, what designer, you didn't hear this. I saw it on a Yahoo News site. And even Yahoo News, which is a left-wing outlet to the extent it's even still standing, you know what they said? They had to editorialize, and they go, oh, yes, but Cuban athletes often leave for the money. And so it can't possibly be, once again, apologizing for communism, apologizing for the Castros and the left. It can't be that these field hockey guys, these 8 field hockey guys who defected to Canada at the end of the PanAm Games, it can't be that they wanted to get out of a communist dictatorship, that they risked their lives and that of their families to do it. It can't be that, right? It's that they're in it for the money. Oh, right. Because these guys are going to clean up with free agent field hockey contracts? No, it's because they were trying to get the hell out of there. So again, people, I'll tell one more thing. There was an expression I used to like. You've seen the people escaping from Cuba on rafts and everything, trying to get to Florida, the wet foot, dry foot policy of the United States, which I guess is rescinded. It's often been said, you know what, I'll believe that Cuba is a paradise the way the left tells us when I see people getting on rafts and inner tubes, risking their life to try to get into Cuba. It's like we knew a guy who would swear to you that the Berlin Wall was erected to keep people in the West from getting into East Germany and availing themselves of the free services that socialism provides. Seriously, there are people who think that. They think Cuba's so great and that the Berlin Wall was not kept to keep the Eastern Germans in. It was built to keep the West Berliners out so they couldn't get the free services. And you know what? When you encounter stupidity like that, that's when you just drop the mic. And why don't you drop the mic? But you just walk away. Because you can't fix stupid. You can't. All right. I got more to say about this, but I'm not going to get to it. I'm not. Because is that true? Agar reported? We'll get to that. Anyway, I got like a whole ton of stuff. When we come back, I'm going to skip the African-American Cuban refugee thing. I'm going to skip Merkel. When we come back, I think we're going to go straight to, we're going to do a couple things about Whitney Houston and Joe Jackson. But then we're going to get to Hillary Clinton. I got a bone to pick with Hillary Clinton for a change. But that should be good. Anyway, who was the greatest wrestling villain in history? Text me your answers. I see them so far. They're excellent. 71010 is the number. This is Theo Caldwell.
To Theo Caldwell on News Talk 1010.
You are, and if you're just joining us, you got a hell of a nerve coming in this late. You know when this broadcast starts, if you're listening live. If you're listening at your leisure to the podcast, you know what I say. Enjoy and you're welcome. So this episode's theme, as you have heard, is the Rolling Stones. That is Paint It Black. That is kind of in the maybe pile for a name for this eponymous radio broadcast. And we're not going to do that. We're not going to do Paint It Black. Start Me Up, possibly. Ruby Tuesday would be nice. Anyway. So here's what happened moments ago. I went on a whole rant about Cuba because these 8 guys defected from Cuba at the end of the PanAm Games in Toronto. By the way, I'm getting a lot of good texts about the greatest wrestling villain in history, and I'll tell you why I'm asking shortly if you haven't heard. Text me at 71010, greatest wrestling villain in history. A lot of sheiks are getting mentioned. The Sheik, the Iron Sheik. I don't know if this is a racist I don't know what that means. The audience, I don't know. Did somebody pick someone from the Western Hemisphere to pick as a villain? But yeah, it seems like a lot of overseas characters are getting picked as the greatest. There is a correct answer, by the way, to who is the greatest wrestling villain in history. There's a correct answer, and I'm looking for it. Text me at 71010. Now, anyway, Cuba. And I have said, and I'm not going to rehash the whole thing, I just said basically, don't tell me that Cuba's this halcyon paradise because, socialists say so and Barack Obama opened an embassy there. 8 guys just defected. It's a lousy place. It's a prison, okay? It's a bad news place, Cuba, okay? Now, I've heard a few things on the text board that I find interesting. I'm hearing it was announced on the day it happened on News Talk 1010. Of course it was announced. We have a crack news team here. But I tell you, unless you missed that announcement, like we're not a print outlet. Well, we own one, but we're not a print outlet, right? You can watch TV news till your eyes fall out. You're not going to hear. I didn't all week, except for I didn't hear it anyway. I didn't see it anywhere, particularly in the print. Somebody's saying page 8 of the Toronto Star. Okay. And I also heard, and this we'll look into, I heard that either Jim Richards or Mike Bullard, two of the hosts here, were offended by the Cubans defecting. But I'm not clear I don't know if Jim or Mike, if you're listening, I don't know which it is. But apparently they were offended because these defectors want to be in America, not in Canada. I don't know. And one more thing on this. Kathy from Burlington, one of our best texters, she sent me a note to say that Cubans tell us how much they love Cuba right up to the moment they throw themselves into shark-infested waters to get away from Trudeau's Uncle Castro. I can't put it any better. Here endeth the lesson. Let's move on. Okay, Sunday of this past week, Angela Merkel, and I'm not going to say Angela Merkel. Don't ask me to say Angela Merkel. It's stupid. It's Angela Merkel. Just smarten up. Angela Merkel, you heard me. The Chancellor of Germany, she fainted during a whatchamacallit, a performance, an opera, like a festival of Wagner. I will say Wagner instead of Wagner, but Wagner. So anyways, it's this festival of Wagner, this German composer, yeah? And Angela Merkel fainted. Now, having sat through a great deal of Wagner myself, more sympathetic I could not be. Anyway, that happened. We wish a speedy recovery to her and let that be a lesson to her. Don't listen to Wagner unless it's on a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Also on Sunday, star candidate or floor crosser or whatever you want to call her, Eve Adams. I know this was reported here. This cracks me up. She was a Conservative member of Parliament, you'll recall, and then crossed the floor to join Justin Trudeau's Liberals. And then she was running for the nomination in Eglinton Lawrence, where our pal Joe Oliver, current finance minister, is the Conservative member of Parliament. Anyway, Eve Adams lost. She lost handily, and it was really bad. But, I shouldn't be laughing because, snooze. But anything where with Trudeau and the people who would decide to make him the leader of them all, anytime when they fail publicly, it cracks me up. I don't know why. I'm no longer worried. I still think Justin Trudeau will be prime minister one day, but I don't think it'll be any day soon. And I'm at the point now where I can be amused by him, and I am. Not nearly so chipper as that. Whitney Houston's daughter died at 22 on Sunday. You know about that. I won't dwell on it, but very sad. Hate that. I'm watching the news today. There was some kind of a big fight at her funeral. Awful, just awful story. We want to have more fun in this broadcast, so we're not going to talk about anything that depressing. Also, Joe Jackson, the dad of Michael Jackson, had a stroke in Brazil. He's 87 years old. I think he's still alive. It's tough. And one more thing from Monday, and I got some text from Lynn about this too, but I was going to cover this for sure. On Monday, I don't know if you heard about this, in the city of Detroit, they erected a statue honoring Satan. They erected a statue honoring Satan. Patrick O'Neill's giving me the whatever, the symbol, the heavy metal from behind the thing. What are you talking? Are things in Detroit not bad enough? Isn't it redundant to dedicate Detroit to Satan? I mean, it is the worst place that's not Cuba in the entire world. Yet, you know what? It's like the people in Detroit looks around and goes, you know what? Things don't suck quite hard enough around here. Let's make a statue of the devil and put it right in front of Joe Louis Arena, right? Oh my goodness, don't even start. Okay, stop that. All right, so that happened. So good luck to Detroit. The last place I heard about that erected a statue to Satan and dedicated the place to him was Haiti. How's that working out, right? Okay. All right, now here's something. Let's take it back live and local, but it's also going to bring us into Hillary Clinton, as I promised. And I know you can't wait for me to talk about Hillary Clinton, but just stay with me. On Monday, and I know you saw this because we covered it wall to wall, protesters of the Black Lives Matter group shut down the Allen Road. They shut it down. Now, they were upset, and if you know this broadcast, you know I'm hard on police. They're upset because a cop who shot a black person in Toronto in the area a few years ago was exonerated, or at least let off the hook, and they weren't happy about it, so they shut down the Allen Road. Now, I don't know the details of the case, right? And I'm not going to weigh in on that particular case. And I'm not meaning to cop out, because my instinct is never to be on the cop's side, so don't worry. That's not what I'm doing. Here's what I'm saying, though. Let's say that was an unjust decision to let that cop off the hook. What in the hell do you think you're accomplishing by ruining life for everybody else, by shutting down the Allen Road? That's stupid. Do you think you're honoring that young man by doing that? Because I don't. What you're representing, I would say this and we have a lot of people from the Black Lives Matter movement who listen to this broadcast. What I would say to you is, this is a serious issue that you're representing of police violence and of the mortality, rate among young people, young black people, young people, or people in general when they deal with cops who I think are too violent and too militarized these days. And I think you do a disservice to the important message that you are bringing when you do something stupid like shut down the Allen Road, as you did here in Toronto on Monday. If you're not from Toronto, Allen Road is basically you can't really get to the highway and back without it. It's a very important expressway. It's horrible. I want to say one more thing. This will bring us to Hillary and Martin O'Malley. I've told you 5 people, only 5 people might be president next year. Martin O'Malley, Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, or Scott Walker. One of those 5, okay? Now, Martin O'Malley used to be governor of Maryland. He's the furthest long shot of that 5. He was at a Black Lives Matter. He was at a Netroots thing. And in response to this whole Black Lives Matter thing, he said all lives matter. Now, you agree with that, don't you? Who doesn't agree with that? All lives matter. I guess maybe Planned Parenthood doesn't agree with that, right? Maybe Deborah Nicotola doesn't agree with that. But aside from that, every reasonable person thinks that. You know what? The guy got booed. The guy got ripped to shreds. He had to grovel and apologize because apparently you can't say all lives matter. You have to balkanize it and say, no. Your color puts you here, your color puts you there, so only Black lives matter. That's ridiculous. All lives matter. And again, you got important issues, but when you start getting all racialist about it and saying that other people don't matter because they don't share your skin color or whatever, you know something? They got a word for that, man. They got a word for that. Now, Hillary, right before we go to break, we got a lot to say about Hillary, and I'm going to keep it short on this broadcast because this is going to be a developing story for quite a while. Hillary Clinton, though, unveiled a climate plan, like a climate change plan, as these leftists are always doing. After which, she got on a private plane that burns 347 gallons of fuel an hour. This was in Iowa, okay? This happened Tuesday. Also, the plane was made in France. Now, Hillary says she wants to install 500 million solar panels in the United States. 500 million solar panels if she becomes president of the United States. Welcome to the liberal mind, okay? Welcome to the liberal mind. Classic left-wing mistake. You measure the inputs instead of the outputs. The cost of something as opposed to the result. She's telling you how much she's going to spend, what effort she's going to put in, but she's not going to tell you what result it's going to get. If you want to change the energy consumption, worry about the outcome, not the inputs. That was this week. Now, you may think I'm going to go on. We're going to take a break in 1 second. You may think I'm going to go on about the email scandal that erupted with or bubbled up again with Hillary. I'm not, because we'll deal with that going forward. It's going to be a 1.5-year thing. It's not going away. Hillary's not going away. And to those of you who ask, the reason I deal with this U.S. election stuff, besides the fact that you clearly care because you text me at 71010, is because Canadian coverage of U.S. politics sucks. And I'm doing this for you at no extra charge. This is Theo Caldwell. We'll be right back.
This is Theo Caldwell on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.
Somebody give Patrick O'Neill an award for timing that liner. That was beautiful, yeah. Please allow me to introduce myself. This is Theo Caldwell. We're doing the Rolling Stones this episode because it's Mick Jagger's birthday last week. He's 72 years old. And also because there's another news hook, kind of a pun. You'll see. It's tenuous. They can't all be, mortal locks when I choose a reason to do the music. But whatever. Listen, let me deal with what we've talked about so far. Okay. I've asked you to send me by text. I don't really want to talk about it because I don't have a lot of time, but text me at 71010 your opinion. Who was the greatest wrestling villain of all time? And I've got lots here, which are very good. I got lots of Sheiks, as I mentioned. Here's the other thing. I also have told you, we had a brief discussion about U.S. presidential politics. And I told you once again that I do this for you at no extra charge. I tell you that only 5 people are going to be president: Walker, Rubio, Bush, Clinton, or O'Malley. That's it, okay? I tell you that, and I've also said, right before the break, I said to you, the Canadian coverage of American politics sucks. But before I move on, I just want to unpack that sentiment so you know exactly what I mean. First, Canadian analysis, such as it is, of U.S. politics, is always from the left. I mean, it's even further from the left than U.S. analysis is, right? Because with the exception of, say, Fox News or with the Wall Street Journal, you get nothing but left-wing, not even bias, just assumptions about everything. You know, teachers are fond of saying, if you can read this, thank a teacher. Well, if you think Barack Obama's a genius, thank a journalist. Because that's all you hear, okay? So it's got the same tired leftism. It's never had a challenged thought in its life. That's the one. But here's the more important thing. At least in the States, you get people who are there, who are on the ground, who have experience. Even a complete yutz like Juan Williams, left-wing guy, at least he's been reporting on this and had access to folks for decades. Okay. What you get in Canada, besides it is leftist and boring as hell, is you get like some slumped over professor, on remote from McGill or Brock or something, and he talks like, maybe we want to possibly take a look sometime in the future that perhaps John Kasich could. It's just awful. So if I weren't, American as well as Canadian and didn't move in those circles and read other stuff, I don't know what I'd do, because there's no way to hear, except for this, with the glaring exception of this broadcast, there's no place to hear any proper analysis of U.S. presidential race. And one more thing, Mike Ben Dixon, the program director here, and I had a discussion about this. We agree. You hear all the time in Canadian media, you hear, we've got to talk about Canada. This is Canadian. This is Canada. We don't care about American things. Oh, yeah? Yeah, I heard that. I've heard that in print when I wrote for The Sun, when I wrote for The Post. It was always, we have to talk about Canada. Well, Canada's important. It's our country. But you know something? You write a piece about Sarah Palin or George W. Bush or Barack Obama. I get it on my text board. You get it when you write a column in a newspaper here in Canada. You get 10 times more reaction talking about the American side of things than you do writing a column about Thomas Mulcair. You don't believe me? Go talk about Thomas Mulcair. Go talk about his beard. Watch the reaction, all right? The lines are not going to light up. But my text board, I got a page just from talking about this right now. By the way, this is one of those shows. I don't have time to text you. I'll stay late and I'll text everybody back. I can't text you right now. 7-10-10. Oh, the other thing. So I've asked about the greatest wrestling villain. I've also told you who will and will not be president. So my texts are all colliding. So somebody texted, what about Bobby Jindal? And I'm like, for what? For president or greatest wrestling villain? Bobby Jindal is the governor of Louisiana. Nice guy, former congressman. He's not going to be president. It's not going to happen. Big John Studd, The Undertaker, who is the greatest wrestling villain of all time? Text me at 71010. Stop calling. I see Patrick's busy. Leave him alone. I got more to say. Okay, let's go live and local. On Tuesday this week, Olivia Chow announced that she will be the NDP candidate in the relatively new riding of Spadina Fort York, Midtown Toronto, running against Liberal incumbent Adam Vaughan. They both used to be city councilors, right? It's as I said last week in a different context, it's like Kissinger said about the Iran-Iraq war. It's a pity they both can't lose. But at the same time, this is something I'm going to enjoy watching, like two lizards in a pail, right? Just watch them fight it out. I mean, I wouldn't vote for Olivia Chow. She knows that. We know that. But, I do think I thought she handled herself decently during the mayoral race as a decent enough person. Adam Vaughan, though, that guy, he always seems to me like he's about to shriek or cry. Like, look at him on the news. Like, look at the expression. Like, he's about to just lose it. Like, come apart, and you feel like you should be calm. It's like, everything okay? Like, you didn't say, like, are you okay? So this should be a good one. I don't know who's going to win. It's not going to be the conservative, though, but this is going to be good. Also on Tuesday, Tom Cruise was in town to promote Mission Impossible Rogue. Mission Impossible Rogue is talk about cross-marketing and product placement. It's just him driving around in a Nissan. Our buddy Ben Maroney interviewed him, or was talking. Yeah, saw a picture on the Twitter. Ben talked to him. Okay. Also, remember that all those toll booth robberies way back that happened? We reported them here. Intrepid reporting on this broadcast. They arrested 10 people for robbing all those toll booths. I guess they heard them jingling, right, with all the tokens. So 10 people on Tuesday got arrested. They solved the case of the toll booth things. Let's see. Tuesday also. This one is good. On Tuesday, a new Dr. Seuss book hit the stores. This was found in a box in Dr. Seuss's home. Now, he died, Dr. Seuss, on my 18th birthday. So those of you with the Google, you can check. I've dated myself. I don't care. It's not a secret how old I am. Anyway, he died on my 18th birthday, and I always thought it was something, sad and oddly poetic that Dr. Seuss died the day I became an adult. But a new book was found, and it hit the stores. I intend to buy it. The book is called What Pet Should I Get? The answer, by the way, is a dog. It's always a dog. And adopt, don't shop. Shout out No Kill Shelter. Shout out our friend Irene and the No Kill movement here in Toronto. But dogs are outstanding. That is the policy of this program. I can't wait to read the new Dr. Seuss book. Whenever I ask what the last book I read is, I always say, this isn't a Dr. Seuss book, but I always say, Go Dog Go. Because it's a short book. I read it pretty much daily. But Go Dog Go. I talked about Zen-like simplicity. Love that. Wednesday, I don't care about that guy. Speaking about animals, though, this is the perfect segue, an award-winning segue. And I know you heard about this. This dentist, this schmuck, the guy from Minnesota, This was on Wednesday this week. I could have done this any day of the week, but this is when it really blew up. This guy went to kill Cecil the lion over in Africa. His name is Walt Palmer, the dentist. He paid $50,000 for the chance to go over to Africa and kill this lion. Now, a few things happen after that, right? First of all, decent people all over the world are outraged. Jimmy Kimmel, you might have seen on YouTube or on live, Jimmy Kimmel gave a monologue about it, got incredibly choked up. I understand. Mia Farrow tweeted the guy's home address. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm furious about it. And then today, or just today, we find out that Cecil's brother, another lion named Jericho, who had been protecting Cecil's cubs since Cecil was killed, he got poached too. What the hell's wrong with everybody? This makes me, look, I love animals considerably more than I love people. By the way, is that what I got, 347 left? Yeah, okay, fine. So this makes me upset, and I could go all day, and whatever. But here's what I don't understand: hunters, not just idiots like this Walt Palmer, this Minnesota dentist, and he says things like, "I took that lion." You didn't take a lion. You take a bath or a schwitz or something. You don't take a lion. You shoot a lion like an idiot, which you are. I've never got hunters, though. I've never understood it. I mentioned Sarah Palin earlier. I don't even believe all the rationale about, I have to shoot wolves from a helicopter because of the culling of the herd and this. Oh, it's the only way we can get venison. Shut up. We got more food, more everything available. You don't need to be a hunter. Find something else to do. Build model airplanes. I hate that. Like, and again, I'm a right-of-center guy. I believe in the ability of private citizens to own guns. But my God, you got to go shoot an animal? What is wrong with you? But I want to say one other thing. One thing. There was some discussion that people say that the news media pushed the lion story, because it's been everywhere, right? They pushed it to cover up the Planned Parenthood videos that I've talked about the last 2 episodes, where Planned Parenthood is aborting babies and selling the parts of the babies. Now, I covered both those stories. So, I also have told you, I don't think media bias happens with a conspiracy. Like they all sit around like the stonecutters and what should we bury and what should we do? I think it is perfectly intellectually consistent to be outraged by Planned Parenthood, cover that as I have done to death, and also be outraged by the killing of a lion and what it represents, okay? Horrible stuff. Anyway, it's not conspiracy that this is a big story. It should be. Speaking of which, on Thursday, I'm going to skip ahead of a few things. On Thursday, a judge in the United States blocked the release of more of those Planned Parenthood videos that I've talked about. They're undercover videos of various members of Planned Parenthood, which is the largest abortion provider. I shouldn't laugh when I say that. It's the largest abortion provider in the United States. It does 40% of the abortions in the United States. There have been 54 million of those in total since 1973 Roe versus Wade. It gets $500 million in taxpayer dollars. It is the largest individual abortion provider in the world, Planned Parenthood. And these people who work there have been videotaped saying the most disgraceful, disgusting, disturbing things about how they harvest babies' organs and sell them. Anyway, there's another video, and a judge blocked its release. And Barack Obama called the video makers extremists. So it's not the people who are aborting babies, saving the organs, and selling them who are extremists, according to Barack Obama. No, it's the people who make the videos to expose them. Just let them speak in their own words. Now, again, in today's day and age, you can't sell a ride in your car on Uber, but you can sell baby parts. Welcome to the liberal mind. Okay? Thursday also, this is a tie-in with the Rolling Stone theme that we're doing. The editor at Rolling Stone magazine, who was responsible for this complete hoax of a rape story that happened, this is the last few months, stepped down. I don't know if he stepped down from Rolling Stone. It's not like it's the UN. Like the person quit, left. Patrick O'Neill and I could do a whole show on that rape hoax at University of Virginia. But Rolling Stone editor, at least there is some recompense for the irresponsibility. Okay, we're going to take a break in a second because I want to fly through a few more things that are absolutely live and local. When we come back, I'm going to talk about an abusive cop who's collected $600,000 since he's been suspended. That's been 7 years he's been suspended. $600,000 this guy's collecting. I'm going to mention that. A little bit more about tickets handed out at the PanAm Games, the Olympics, and I'm going to give you the news hook, the reason why I'm asking you to text me at 71010 and tell me the greatest wrestling villain of all time. There is a correct answer. This is Theo Caldwell. We'll be right back.
More from Theo Caldwell on News Talk 1010.
Yeah. You know what? Sympathy for the Devil is such a good song that we played it twice. But this, of course, you can't always get what you want. Which, if it were not so wordy, would be in the running to be a name of this eponymous radio broadcast. This is Theo Caldwell. This is the Rolling Stones. And we have at least two passable, presentable news hooks for making Rolling Stones the theme of tonight's broadcast. One, Mick Jagger's birthday was this week. Two, the Rolling Stone magazine editor responsible for the UVA, quit. UVA rape hoax story, quit, or was fired, or whatever. Good riddance. Okay? Oh, I like that. It's nice. Okay, we don't have a lot of time left. Folks, they don't give me enough time, right, your congressman? But I do want to touch on, I gotten so many texts, as always, the serious issues are getting texts at 7-10-10, which I appreciate, and I will stay late and text you all back, even though I've got a square dance to get to. But I want to deal with the great suggestions I've gotten for the question I've asked you through tonight's broadcast. Who's the greatest wrestling villain of all time? I mentioned the Sheik, the Iron Sheik, Mr. McMahon, Hollywood Hogan. That's actually quite a good one, because when Hollywood Hogan went to WCW and turned bad, he was he got the beard, was all black. He was pretty good. And I got one here I hadn't thought of as a heel, because he's just been around for so long. The Undertaker. Like, I guess The Undertaker, the dead man, he's now so beloved, you can't really think of The Undertaker as a bad guy, but those are strong suggestions. Really strong suggestions. Anyway, there's a news reason as to why I'm asking you to text me at 71010, greatest wrestling villain of all time, and I'll get to it in just uno momento. Now, I didn't get where I am by Trump. Trump is the greatest villain, I'm hearing from somebody. Yeah, Donald Trump is the greatest. He's been at WrestleMania. Okay. I didn't get where I am today by lying to the listener. I told you before the break. I'm going to talk about briefly, though. I could go all day on this, but I'm just going to briefly. Michelle Mandel in the Toronto Sun wrote about this abusive cop. And I'm not being editorializing, neither is Michelle here. This guy has been suspended since 2008. He's a Durham police officer. His name is Glenn Turpin. But he's been getting paid since 2008. He's collected $600,000, according to Michelle Mandel in The Sun, while he's been suspended on administrative leave. And he has repeated charges of being abusive toward people, violent toward people, prisoners, beating the hell out of people. He's got some kind of a black belt and this and that. Essentially, reading the article, this guy, this cop, this Glenn Turpin, he seems Durham officer. He's Dwight Schrute, but not funny. Like, he's just violent and just whatever. Now, when I said I could go on all day on this, regular listeners know I go off on police sometimes. They also know that I said I wouldn't do it till the summer, and we are, I would say, right in the heart of the summer. So I am well within my rights to say that, to go off on the cops. But you know what? I just don't want to, because it always ends up the same. I've said my piece on it. I think police today are too aggressive, too violent, too militarized. And every time I do, I get some people who agree with me. I get texts, idiotic texts. Who are you going to call, tough guy, if there's a crime in your house? I'm not going to call anybody. I'm going to handle it. The cops just come and give me a ticket. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to solve anything. All right? So I don't want to go down that road. But I am going to use it as a segue into another news story from this week, which I guess came out on Friday as well. Friday, it was reported that something like 1,750 or 1,800 tickets were issued for people using those high-occupancy vehicle lanes designated for the PanAm Games. Now, I've been all over that. This station's been all over that, all right? And I talked about how the control freaks in the provincial government, Kathleen Wynne, the premier, and others, they wanted these high-occupancy lanes to exist so they could change our behavior because they're going to make them into toll lanes. Anyway, almost 2,000 people got tickets during the PanAm Games. 2,000! And an additional full-on 2,000 tickets handed out for other PanAm traffic-related violations. That's nearly 4,000 tickets. Yeah, now, that's not a huge amount of money from a government's perspective, but to each of those 4,000 people ticketed, it's a big deal. And this is why I say, I think the modern policeman, in large measure, is an armed revenue collector. And I don't like that. Let people go about their business. Create a situation, as Kathleen Wynne and them did, by putting up HOV lanes 2 weeks before you might need them in order to change behavior, and then ticket thousands of people. This is what I mean, folks, okay? When I say less government, which is the political policy of this program, less government, leave me alone. Get lost. Honestly. Seriously. And don't make them toll lanes. I already paid for those roads. I got to pay again? Or get another ticket on it? All right. Now, speaking of control freaks and guns, also on Friday, China was awarded the 2022 Winter Olympics. Weren't we just there? Weren't we just in China for the Olympics like 2 seconds ago with all the synchronized drumming and everything? Wasn't that like 2008? Didn't South Park? 2008 is when it happened. I know it was the Summer Games, but whatever. Boston has bowed out. I just want to say this. Charles Krauthammer, smartest guy in the world. Look him up if you don't know him. Charles Krauthammer. He affirms that with China getting the games yet again, the Olympics going forward will be a playground for dictatorships because only they can ram the inconveniences associated with them down the throats of their people. CF, what I was just saying about the Ontario Liberals and the HOV lanes and ticketing thousands of people for the PanAm Games. Now, we're not a dictatorship. I'm not saying that we're quite there yet. Right Honorable Thomas Mulcair. I'm not saying we're quite a communist dictatorship just yet, but that's what Charles Krauthammer thinks, that if you give the games to China again, and don't, it's not about opening the economy or anything else. China, like Cuba, is a nasty place with a Laogai, which is their version of the Gulag. It's a really bad news place, the People's Republic of China. Okay, and the communist dictatorship is effectively, and that's what Charles Krauthammer thinks. He thinks that the Olympics, with the IOC, obviously the most corrupt thing since Godfather 2. Shout out Sid Seixeiro. To give it to that dictatorship yet again, it just shows that's what the Olympics are going to be going forward. Now, this is why I've asked you to name for me the greatest villain in wrestling history. And by the way, just during the segment, I got someone said Andy Kaufman, which is nicely done. We got some very good suggestions. And this, I could have done the whole show on this as a theme, because this guy, this is the answer to the question. This man is the monster at the end of this book. This man, as is the policy of this program, was the greatest wrestling villain of all time. His name, Roddy Piper. There he is. Now, Roddy Piper passed away in his sleep of a heart attack, cardiac arrest, apparently, at his home in Hollywood. He was 61 years old. And I got to tell you something. When I was a kid, I was just on the cusp. I was old enough to watch wrestling. I mean, I watched Today on YouTube. I watched him smash Jimmy Snuka in the head with that coconut on Piper's Pit. And when that happened, I watched it happen, not live, but the day it was broadcast, 'cause I don't think it was a live show. I was just at the age where I should have known wrestling was fake, or staged, but I didn't quite know. I was about 30. So Roddy Piper used to scare the hell out of me because I thought he was real because he was totally unpredictable. The coconut was real. I thought maybe they cut one. I didn't know. All right. Nice drop in. That was good. But I'll tell you something. I wanted to meet Roddy Piper. Like, he was one of the very short list of people that I wanted to meet, and now I will have no chance. Now, he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but was cancer-free, they said. So he lived in Hollywood. He was only 61, and he died in his sleep. And according to every quarter of the wrestling world, I'm hearing, what a great guy he was. Bret Hart, the excellence of execution, Bret Hitman Hart, said that he would never have been anything but a footnote in wrestling if Roddy Piper hadn't reached out and made it possible for him. And Roddy Piper, when he started, was 17 years old. He was the youngest professional wrestler in the world. His first match was against Larry the Axe Hennig, and he lost in like 10 seconds. But then they would say he was never pinned. He was never pinned. That was the whole thing about Roddy Piper. Until he let Bret Hart pin him at WrestleMania to give him the Intercontinental title. Now, here's the thing. Patrick O'Neill just played the Scotland the Braves, the bagpipes that Roddy Piper would come into. And he had this whole thing. And I would go to Maple Leaf Gardens, and it would say, from Glasgow, Scotland. But the guy was from Winnipeg. His real name, Roddy Piper, his real name was Roderick George Toombs. He was from Winnipeg, and he didn't even try to do a Scottish accent. It was like Kevin Costner in Robin Hood, like no accent attempt whatsoever. So a lot of us should have realized this guy was absolutely Winnipeg, wall to wall. And a great Canadian, and he passed away. So anyway, I'm devastated about it. I wanted to meet the guy. Someone's texting me that wrestling's not real. Yeah, that's true. But Roddy Piper was a real guy. Roderick Toombs was a real human being, apparently an incredibly nice human being, which is, I think, the most important thing you can be. And here's the last news item. As I speak to you, we are waiting for the writ to be dropped for the election to be called here in Canada, the federal election. Now, if you listen to the podcast, that may have already happened. It's about to happen. And we all know the election's going to be on October 19th. Now, I just want to get my bet in early, like if I could go back in time and bet on the Miracle Mets in 1969. I still think at the end of this election, we're going to have the Right Honorable Thomas Mulcair. I talked about Harper fatigue, Stephen Harper fatigue. You know, guys like me who are even inclined to vote for Stephen Harper. I'm tired. I'm tired of the guy. I read an excerpt of John Ibbotson's new book in the Globe and Mail about Stephen Harper, Prime Minister. And he was saying how Harper's conservatives don't have opponents. They have enemies. They have enemies. For them, everything is personal. There can be no honest disagreement. And I hate when people on the right act like the left, right? Let the left be that way. That's their thing. We don't do that. So, I don't know. I've talked about Stephen LeDrew on the show. He's a liberal, but he's the nicest guy in the world. We don't agree on politics. But I can tell you, I don't know a nicer guy than Stephen LeDrew. Yet guys I've known and have worked with, who worked with Stephen Harper, we agree on everything politically, but I don't want to be in a room with them. Anyway, I just want to get my bet in. Assuming the writs drop, the election's October 19th, I think Mulcair is going to win. God help us all. All right, one last piece of news. I'm not going to be here, folks, the next broadcast. For that day is slated to be the happiest of my youngish life. How can that be, you may ask, if I'm not speaking with you that day, gentle listener? Oh, I think you know. We are one. Folks, this has been an excellent broadcast. You truly enjoyed it. This is Theo Caldwell. Good night.
She just can't be chained to a life where nothing's gained.